In this film review, I'll be looking at Stanley Kubrick's outlook of the Vietnam War and its relationship to reality. I'll also discuss how the war and the events portrayed in the film ultimately provides the grounds for subjective debate on the justification of the campaign. Finally, I'll discuss how the companion reading influenced my viewing of Full Metal Jacket. Full Metal Jacket is the story of a number of young American recruits newly enlisted in the Marine Corps with the intention of fighting in the Vietnam War with the purpose of eradicating the communist threat. It follows their arduous and tumultuous physical and combat mindset training at boot camp as they prepare for war. The film then follows one of those recruits, Joker, as he is assigned war correspondent covering the war as a journalist and reporting both consciously and unconsciously on the dehumanizing effects of the Vietnam War, and in particular to the city and people of Hue. Whilst dispatched to Hue, the audience is introduced to a bustling, peaceful city and its people. At first glance, we are to assume that all is well and that the people of Hue are living harmoniously alongside their so-called liberators and stalwarts of democracy. This, however, is quickly dispelled as the locals steal one of the soldiers' cameras and subsequently make deliberate lewd gesticulating motions in response to their presence prior to riding away. This scene highlights the general hatred and repulsion that many of the Vietnamese people had for Americans and is consistent with the attitudes of many Vietnamese at the time. As an audience, we no longer can assume that the Americans are needed or even welcome in their country. We later get a glimpse of political correctness in the form of reporting, as the war journalists are told not to use the term search and destroy but sweep and clear. It highlighted the fact that the reality of war is not always depicted truthfully to the rest of the world. The reporting is sanitized to ensure the ongoing popularity and support for the war effort. After the bombing of Hue, we are shown the result of war and the impact on people and the environment. Widespread and complete destruction of the city and its dwellings, mass extermination of peoples, and the resulting effects on the survivors, including soldiers. When journalists interview several soldiers after the battle regarding their views on the war, it becomes evident that many of the soldiers question their country's involvement and objective, as their actions are appearing unappreciated by the Vietnamese people. Many soldiers have become indifferent to human suffering and the taking of human life and appear unaffected by the atrocities inflicted on others at times of war. In reality, however, it seems that the intense training and conditioning of these soldiers appears to have produced soldiers who enjoy killing at the cost of losing one's moral, human, and compassionate conscience. Stanley Kubrick's film helps depict to its audience that as a consequence of war, human life becomes expendable and that people's morality diminishes or becomes virtually non-existent. Battle-hardened soldiers, depending on their combat service, become increasingly unaffected by the death and cruelty inflicted on their fellow man. The war has provided a conduit by which human morals and values are quickly dissipated, whilst establishing a playground for lawlessness and reckless and indiscriminate actions without consequence. This is evident in their indiscriminate killing of peasant farmers, civilians, and their livestock, the treatment of women, and their complete disrespect for the enemy. Kubrick also portrays the duality of man through the protagonist Joker, who adorns a peace badge on his jacket while simultaneously wearing a helmet with the words reading "Born to Kill." This contradiction exemplifies the emotional and confused predicament faced by the invading soldiers, who generally believe that peace can only be achieved through killing indiscriminately. This further promotes the notion that human morals and values become non-existent. The film also highlighted the divisions and conflicting views held by America and her allies with respect to their foreign policy and what soldiers thought of their role. This is evident during the interview when their soldiers express their opinions on the war and America's involvement in the war, in which one soldier quotes LBJ, "I will not send American boys 8 or 10,000 miles around the world to do a job that Asian boys ought to be doing for themselves." Moreover, during the interviews, many of the soldiers want to kill indiscriminately and for personal satisfaction, while others question why they are there, as they are not wanted even by the people they are defending. Kubrick further invokes the idea that there is a loss of individuality and the dehumanization process that prepares troops into becoming killing machines, to ensure that they do not hesitate to kill. However, Joker is the only character that portrays a small measure of humanity towards his enemy, although he still managed to retain the killer instinct Hartman instilled in him. During the final war scene, Joker himself does something he vehemently detested as well, killing a child, something that repulsed him earlier in the film. Joker destroys a part of his humanity by shooting the sniper. Kubrick also touches on the consequential mental and psychological impact war has on its participants, particularly through the reference to the Thousand-Yard Stare. The Thousand-Yard Stare is identifiable in soldiers with obvious, often permanent psychological trauma attributed to soldiers getting after their first close combat kill, and can be likened to PTSD. The companion reading I've chosen that has influenced my viewing of the film is an autobiographical account of Vietnam War correspondent. This reading discusses Bob Gasaway's experience as an Associated Press reporter covering the Vietnam War in the 1960s and the hardships and suffering of the war. His purpose was to report and inform on the war in what he claims to be the best story in the world, to communicate and get the information out to the rest of the world. Although the film helps to visualize the atrocities and cruelties in the Vietnam War, Bob Gasaway's reading provides a more in-depth analysis. He recalls the conflicts, casualties, inhumanity of civilization, and the sense of esprit de corps, or camaraderie, felt amongst the Marine Corps. In turn, this reading is closely aligned with the film as they are similar in context and both tell the story of a journalist and their experiences in the Vietnam War. The reading provided me an in-depth analysis of what to expect in the film through the eyes of Bob Gasaway. The film was able to explicitly portray these disturbing scenes more visually, putting Gasaway's words to life.